Hey folks, turns out you actually have to make the videos before they'll end up on YouTube. I thought the technology advanced far enough that you didn't need to, but here we are. What are we talking about today? That's a good question. Well, the first is, even though I don't really want to chat too much generally about current events, February has been interesting. I mentioned in my previous video that I loved Black Panther, so that was sort of the up moment of the month. And then the obvious down moment would be the shooting in Florida. And I wanted to discuss just a tiny bit about a non-controversial topic that everybody agrees on, which is gun control. You know, nobody argues about that, right? Okay, maybe a little bit. Maybe judging by my Twitter feed and elsewhere, there's a little bit of disagreement. But I kind of wanted to touch on not how I feel about it, because I'm not very complicated in that regard. I think I fall along with what most people feel. Maybe we'll talk about it more at the end of this little rant, but I think a lot of people, just in general, are scared. Just we're animals like any other animal, and we tend to overthink situations, to look at, and sometimes actually to underthink. Now that I think about it, basically we overvalue some dangers and undervalue others. Anyone who drives a car has already basically established that pretty much the most dangerous thing you can possibly imagine is perfectly acceptable as long as it provides convenience. But in other avenues of our lives, a lot of people are very scared, I would say irrationally so, but just like any other animal. They see a shaking bush and they assume there's a tiger in there, not that it's the breeze. And that's largely because you can be wrong about the breeze 100,000 times, but if you're wrong about the tiger, you're going to be eaten. I don't think that's a good way to live. This is coming from somebody who's like a professional coward, you know. But I also would imagine it is very difficult when people have found some sort of superstition or rhythm to their life that they believe makes them safer. Whether or not it actually does, I'm highly skeptical. And that thing I'm talking about in this case is actually owning a firearm. But there's a strong belief that it will make you safer. And there's some anecdotal stories people will tell you about somebody who fended off 30 gangsters with a pistol or something like that. But this belief is very strong. And I think it's because on the face of it, especially when you consider all the events in human history, that generally speaking, if you have some sort of device that will deliver harm at a great range, that you're better off than if you have a device that delivers harm at a short range. And so it seems sensible. And so people see that, they have that thought, and they think, well, if I have one of these knife-throwing machines, then clearly I'm invulnerable. It does seem to forget that assailants and murderers and those sort of things are also cowards. And so that it's very likely that if there's a good chance that you will be armed, that they'll just attack you from behind. Especially if you are doing open carry, then you're very likely to just be shot in the back. But convincing people that these tools that make them more comfortable are just hypothetical, superstitious sort of dealies is probably impossible. There's things that are far sillier than owning firearms that people believe far stronger. And I don't think it is reasonable or something people should expect to try and muster up courage from cowards. And I'm not saying that as a negative. I'm not saying that being a coward is a negative trait. This is more like being tall or having brown eyes or whatever. It's just something that people are. But much like being tall is not very indicative of being, or not very conducive to being short, being a coward is not conducive to being courageous. And expecting courage from people in that position seems naive to me. I think once people are scared and once they believe their widget keeps them safe, it's going to be very difficult to convince them otherwise. they'll still jaywalk or drive recklessly or drive at all, frankly, even though that's going to put them in a far more likely maim or death situation than any interaction with another human being outside of a vehicle. But that's just the state of the mind, because again, you're looking at millions of years of assume there's a tiger in the bush, because being wrong is fine. But if you assume otherwise, being wrong about something being safe will likely get you killed. Being wrong about something being dangerous won't. I do think, generally speaking, humans should be better than that. But this is coming from somebody who barely can remember to turn on the record button for his videos, so take from that what you will. And again, that's one of those things where I think because of our culture, at least for the US, there's this sense that being strong is, or being courageous is this positive trait. And really, to me, at least thinking about it off the cuff right now, it's more of just something that people are. And it's not, just like I wouldn't praise somebody for being 6'5", I wouldn't praise somebody for having the particular neural networks that are conducive to, doing those things. I wouldn't praise it, but I am appreciative of it. Obviously, people who do like firefighting, I'm so happy they exist. And it wouldn't be me. If there was a fire, I would run at 900 miles an hour the other direction. Same is true if a gun went off. I would be gone so fast that it would make those ninjutsu transposition techniques in Naruto look like nothing. I might not even leave a log behind. It would just be a puff of wind. But yeah, so that's my 2 cents on that. Everything along with people trying to blame this or that for why it happened. I've talked about this elsewhere, but I generally think that, and this is something that actually came up with that movie with Black Panther, is obviously I'm going to keep this very light, so there's not really any spoilers, but we create our monsters. That doesn't absolve them. That doesn't make them innocent. It's not like they were unable to react. They could have done many different things. But through action and inaction, we create the things that we then later condemn. And I think just like you can't treat them as if they had no choice in the matter, you can't act like, you as the society that surrounds them can't act like you had no choice in the matter. That's something we saw, is that, there are all sorts of signs, and I believe more often than not we'll find that this will be the case, is that society could have done something, but especially for the US, maybe less so other places, because it's not profitable. At least not obviously profitable. It is definitely profitable in terms of just sheer man hours and all this destruction that is avoided. But because it is not clearly profitable, then it's largely ignored. And that's not, I don't think that's pessimistic. That's more just when you try to think of a consumer culture, that's just what we're dealing with. I don't like it, but it is, I don't foresee myself changing it single-handedly or anything. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on it. I feel like if we want it to become less common, we as a society all have to take the blame or the responsibility whenever it happens. Not wholly, but definitely in part. And sure, you punish the people who did the stuff. If it was somebody that I knew personally or cared about, then I would likely be just along with everyone else who wants, the person strung up or whatever. I am weak just like any other human. But it is better to be proactive than reactive. The moment you are reactive to tragedy, exclusively, which is what's happening right now, pretty much anyone with a position of power that can make any changes is being reactive. They're talking about what you do once the incident is started. You've already lost. It's at that point you've already given up, and that is a level of cowardice that I find very impressive. That puts me to shame. Like, I thought I had it down. I thought I knew how to be a supreme coward, but being reactive and seeing these losses as acceptable for your own personal narrative is mind-boggling to me. May not be to you, and I'm not judging anybody who disagrees, but wow. it's tough for me to wrap my head around. And I think that's, for that particular bit of conversation, that's probably everything I have to say. Every time it does happen, I find it very sad, and I'm very disappointed almost every single time by most people's reaction. Obviously, the kids from that school and a lot of people younger than myself have been doing some pretty cool stuff lately, and I'm usually annoyed by the narrative from games and movies and things that the young people will save us, just because, much like me, young people become old right quick. But you can be somewhat surprised at just how, I don't want to say incompetent, I'm trying to think of the word, but ineffectual perhaps. It can be utterly shocking how ineffectual adults can be. I think that's what I'm going for. To a degree where I can, again, barely wrap my head around it, just how you can take hundreds of people who have spent a large portion of their life convincing everyone that they will try their best, and then to see them do worse than your average employee at almost any job you've ever had. That is weird. Like, I understand there's complicated interweavings going on and some corruption and just the difficulty of changing ideology and stuff like that, but wow, it just boggles my mind. And I find that in this current environment, at least for another decade or two, as macabre as that statement is, I do think that the whole young people have to save you thing might be the case, just because it feels like this group of people who are like in their 60s and 70s who are in these leadership positions are definitely set in their ways. And I don't like the idea that old dogs can't learn new tricks. I feel like that's just a lazy excuse to sort of die while standing, like cease living while still being alive, sort of the mummy syndrome, or zombies, whatever fit your fancy. Yeah. That's all a lot of mumbo jumbo, I suppose, just sort of musing on current events and finding February to be a very strange month. Obviously, cinematically, it was really good with Black Panther. Thought that was excellent. As far as the world outside of fantasy, the aftermath, I suppose, in some ways can be uplifting, but man, oh man, is it hard? Is it hard to stay frosty, stay positive? I think I'm doing it. Trying to keep an outlook on these things that's more analytical, I suppose. Trying not to just totally give up on entire groups of people. But human mind is what it is, and it can be very difficult sometimes to poke at it. As much as I really want to be Mr. Rogers or Bob Ross, I find it difficult sometimes, and I respect what they accomplished in their lives quite a bit. Very sweet people. People like that we need more of. And I hope we start finding them, because I have no apocalyptic statement to follow that up with. I realize it almost immediately sounded like I was about to say something dark and doomsday, but it would be better. I think if more people had people to turn to, then a lot of very sad events would not happen. Well, I guess I should say, if people had somebody kind to look to, because if you need a shoulder to cry on, you will definitely be able to find it. The problem is that a lot of people who would love to give you their shoulder will do so because it is wildly profitable, either because they run a gang and they need new members, or they happen to be some sort of cult. These sort of profiteering social systems. We need more people who want to do it just because they want to be the shoulder for somebody. Kindness. It's the thing about altruism is that ultimately the more people who do it, the better off everyone is. And you don't have to be selfless. I think altruism is like selfless kindness. Just being kind in general. Even if you're only doing it because you know that the net result is that people will work harder or be nicer or be safer. Even if you're just doing it because of that, that's fine. I would prefer feigned kindness consistent feigned kindness over genuine malice. If somebody is willing to help me out, but in the back of their mind they're like, he's so pathetic, he can't do it on his own, I would take that over somebody who genuinely hates me and works out ways to harm me. And I think at the end of the day, if somebody is donating vast sums of wealth, for instance, just as an example, I'm not even thinking of anybody in general, but if somebody is willing to donate vast sums of wealth, and they're doing so because they feel like people beneath them are unable to do things on their own, and they're pathetic and useless or whatever, but they want the praise that comes with that donation, and because of that feedback loop, they keep doing it. Ultimately, I think that's probably fine. It's not like the idealized norm of lawful good or whatever, but if that were the low bar, like if that were the highest you could go without, like realistically, if that was some sort of weird natural bar of society, I think that'd be pretty good. That'd be a lot better than where we are now, which we are moving, progress is ever consistent, ever churning forward. But yeah, that would be nice. More kindness, feigned or genuine, and less awful. Only a few more days left. Wednesday, get my broken crown replaced officially. It's gonna be nice. Gonna be good to feel somewhat close to whole, because I will admit, jaw kind of hurts. That's gonna go play some Dark Souls probably, and I hope your February has been going well. I hope you and your family, whoever they be, are getting along well, and I hope that by the time we are all old, or older for some of us, that we can look back on the group of people that we hung out with and think, it's not bad. Some folks tried,